Now, thank you everybody, and welcome to this session today from the Schumacher Institute, where we're delighted that Rob de Laet is going to talk to us about cooling the climate, a global call to action. And given the weather we've had up to today recently in the UK, it's been very warm, so cooling the climate sounds like a really good idea. Rob, thank you very much for taking this on, and I shall hand over to you and let you introduce yourself if that's okay. So thank you.
Mm. Thank you, Ian, and also thank you, Julian, for giving me access to the Schumacher Institute, which of course has a great name, and so it's an honor to be here. Um, I have a small presentation that I want to go through. There's also a little slide about myself, so that if you don't mind, I'll just start sharing it. It takes about 20 minutes to go through it, and then we have time for a conversation. And there are not many people in the room, so but we'll see what happens, what evolves. Um, so let me see if I can share this. No, I have to see if I can get it full screen. Is this visible? Can you see? I would like to. I don't hear anybody. So
Sorry,
is it
yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Rob.
okay?
There you
All
go.
right. So the session of the day is cooling the climate. It also says a global call to action. I will make it a little bit more clear how I think we can actually get out of the climate mess much faster if the world wakes up to it and applies the right kind of action. And we have a large scale plan to cool the climate. Um, the simple idea is that it can be done by restoring the biosphere everywhere, by everyone. And I will explain why this would lead to cooling. And I have a specific point about starting with the Amazon rainforest because that's in danger. And if we don't stop the dieback there, basically we will all be toast. So few words about me. So my name is Rob de Laet. I was born in 1956 and I'm Dutch, but I live most of the time in Brazil in a small valley which I acquired 15 years ago to regenerate, to reforest, and to rewild. And in that process, I've learned a lot about microclimates, which later on helped me to write a book. I'm a philosopher from by study, although I never finished it. The books were really, really too thick, and it's an ongoing journey anyway. So I'm a co-author of the book Cooling the Climate: How to Restore the Biosphere and Cool the Earth Within 20 Years, which is quite incredible and definitely a different story from what you hear out in the mainstream news. And I'm working very specifically about on a large-scale reforestation project in the Amazon rainforest. So here's the cover of the book that I wrote together with Peter Banyard. Peter is probably the most important person alive as an adept of the Gaia theory by James Lovelock. Lovelock lived not far from his house and was quite often they sat together with other people like Lynn Margolin and others around the table. He was also one of the co-founders of the Ecologist magazine. And so a lot of the theories around how Gaia operates were conceived actually at his kitchen table. And he's 85, and there's still a big, although I'm almost 70, there's still a big difference in age between us. Anyway, the most important thing is not cooling the climate, the title, but the thing below it: how to revive the biosphere and cool the Earth within 20 years. If that is really possible, then that would be a game changer, obviously. So I hope to convince you that there might be some truth in what I'm going to present here. So the whole simple reasoning is that right now we are focusing mainly on greenhouse gases and the emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, mainly by burning fossil fuels, and also by land use change. Um, but in fact, there is a second part which is never, almost never highlighted. That while these greenhouse gases absolutely heat up the planet, there is also a cooling mechanism which is not in the models, and that cooling mechanism is actually organized by a healthy biosphere. I will come into the details, but basically, what you have to remember right now is that restoring the biosphere means restoring the water cycles, and with that, you restore the climate. We are now in a situation where there are climate tipping points that will have the very likely potential to accelerate climate change rapidly. And so the process we are in is not linear. It will accelerate, and it will make life much more chaotic and in the end unlivable if we don't do something about it in the next years and maybe a decade or two. At some point, we will pass the tipping points, and then basically it's unstoppable. It will create a planet that is uninhabitable for most humans. So there's actually the for me there's a little thing in front of the tipping point but you see that there's about a dozen or so tipping points in the Earth climate system that all are moving towards a change. Recently, there has been a lot of talk in the news about the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridian overturning circulation, which is a large sea current that brings warm water to the coast of Europe and then dives under and then goes down with cool water to the south. And in this case, it brings a lot of warmth to our shores. The UK and where I am right now in the Netherlands, we have a lot of profit for it, because if it wouldn't be there, then winter temperatures would probably be maybe 20 to 30 degrees centigrade lower. That's just one of them. There's many other ones, but I'll come back to the Amazon rainforest soon. Why? Because it's one of the most powerful ones, and it's also the only one that we can actually reverse by actively protecting and regenerating the forest. Well, it's very difficult to stop an ocean current, for instance. So this picture is familiar to everybody. The temperature is going up. And right now, since 2 years, since 2023, we're actually suddenly outside all the modulations of the IPCC climate models, with temperature spikes which are suddenly enormous, and they don't really have a good explanation for that. And I'll come to back to that as well. But we're definitely in an acceleration of climate change, which of course is going to be very, very dangerous in the near future. And this is the big climate elephant in the room. Climate change is in large part caused by land use change and the disruption of living soils, vegetation, and the water cycle. And I will explain that in the next couple of slides, why it's so important to focus not just on the greenhouse gases, but on restoring the water cycles as a cooling mechanism and as a rehydration mechanism of the land. First, my background is I'm a Gaian. I'm an adept to the Lovelock theory of the Gaia theory, that we have to look at the Earth as a superorganism that, like our own bodies, basically has organized all the beings, all life on Earth, to design the processes that make it possible for life to thrive. As you see, there is a very small skin of Earth, of atmosphere, that is protecting us. And all of these species are working together actually to create these conditions for life to thrive. And the temperature of the planet is largely kept stable with greenhouse gases and the water cycle. So we operate from the fact that the Earth is alive, and we are part of a living being, and the atmosphere is a planetary organ, a gaseous skin that actually protects us from the bitter cold of space and the lethal radiation of the sun. At the same time, it also nourishes us with oxygen, as we know, and it nourishes plants with the CO2. So, and we see that the changes in the atmosphere over 3.8 billion years are actually going in the direction of an evolution of a planet more and more able to stabilize conditions on the planet for life to thrive. And this homeostasis that was reached maybe just when we came out of the ice age, basically you could say that the planet has been cooling down over the last few hundred a million years by about 7 degrees centigrade, and that we have very good evidence to see that it was largely done by the increase of vegetation, especially on land. And but now, as humans, since we started agriculture, we have destroyed about half of living biomass in the oceans and on land. And that degradation has diminished the capacity of the planet to maintain that homeostasis, those temperatures that are, well, so it's a different way of looking at at the climate regulation of the planet. Key to this process is photosynthesis, one of the oldest and probably most genius processes ever invented by life. And we all know this. We have all learned this in school, where as soon as the sun reaches green biomass, it starts the process of photosynthesis, where with the help of CO2 and water, it makes sugars, which gives food to animals and also builds up the vegetation itself. But a large part that is always forgotten in that whole process is that for every molecule of sugar that is produced, a couple of hundred of molecules of water are actually evaporated through the leaves of trees and vegetation. And that's a cooling process. That cooling process then, together with bioaerosols, small particles that are ejected from the leaves, these whirl uh, up into the atmosphere, cooling the area below them. And at a little higher level, the bioaerosols, those little particles, they form the nuclei to form raindrops. So it makes the water vapor that comes out of the forest to condensate into clouds and rain out. So this is the first step of cooling that happens. And there's a funny thing that happens at the moment that water that was taken out as vapor. And you know, if you put on the kettle for a cup of tea, it takes a hell of a lot of energy to transform liquid into gas. And that's basically what that photosynthesis is doing. It takes out this heat from the sun, moves water into from liquid to vapor, and it rises up. But then it condensates at cloud level again, and then several things happen at the same time. First of all, the clouds, they form an umbrella against further sunlight, so they cool. They also rain out, so they hydrate. And because of the implosion of the water vapor into liquid, which diminishes it by a factor of 1,000, it collapses, and that brings an under pressure at cloud level, which pulls up air. And at the lower level, it actually pulls in air. And that is actually the way how forests pull in moisture from nearby seas. And the funny stuff is that the funny thing is that that process repeats itself over large contiguous forests. We have research done, for instance, that humidity that's coming into Europe in the time that Europe was forested actually would recycle that moisture all the way over the Eurasian land masses and would bring rain up to northern China. So cutting the forests in France and the UK actually would diminish rain over northern China because that circulation pattern of the biotic pump got collapsed. So we have a two phase um, air conditioning system. One, taking water from the forest floor, evaporate it. That is cooling step one, and then step two at cloud forming. The moment that water condenses, the heat that was in those molecules in the form gets ejected in the form of radiation, and a large part of that radiation is actually in the so-called atmospheric window, which basically means it does not get absorbed by greenhouse gases, and half of it immediately radiates out into space. And a lot of the heat actually stays up there and slowly gets out into space. So it's a two-step radiation. And at the same time, it forms wind and rain, rehydrating the masses. So and if you take away the forests, your rain goes down, and basically there's no hydration and no cooling of lands. It's very easy to create deserts. So this biotic pump principle is what actually is the largest cooling process that we have on Earth, which is completely neglected in the IPCC models. It's only focusing on carbon and other greenhouse gases. So, and here you have some explanations of precipitation over non-forested areas. You can see, for instance, that the Amazon rainforest, actually the rainfall 3,000 kilometers away from the coast is slightly larger than at the coast because of this recycling of moisture. Also goes for the Congo and for the Yenisei, which is a large river in Siberia. And where there are no forested territories, you see in the right-hand side, you see that precipitation goes down. In the case of West Africa, coastal 1,600 meters per millimeters per year, go down to next to zero, just 1,500, 2,000 kilometers inwards. So the recreation of moisture and precipitation and clouds of forest is of huge importance to the climate health of our planet. This is just a picture to wrap it up. The total water cycle, which goes from plant uptake, freshwater lakes, aquifers, to precipitate, to evaporation, precipitation, etc. These cycles are very important, and we as a species have been basically disrupting them everywhere. And so the tropical rainforests have a special place in this system because the species that are there are very much adapted to evaporate a lot of moisture. Why? Because most sunlight comes in at the equator, about 4 times as much as on the poles. So it also needed vegetation that was very adept at processing that heat. And what is happening right now is that the cooling capacity of the global rainforests is actually something to the tune of 2.5 degrees centigrade on a global level. And if you erase them, that's the amount of warming up the planet will see on top of IPCC models. That is basically game over. And once you understand that the tropical rainforests are the largest cooling and rehydration organs of the planet, you understand that they're not something that is nice to have, but they are crucial for planetary climate health. Forests in our neighborhoods also cool to a lesser extent and rehydrate, but to a lesser extent. And we have seen studies that on the east side of the United States, after the first rush of colonialism, a lot of the woods were taken out. And then about 100, 150 years ago, people started to reforest these areas, let's say New York, Maryland, those areas. And those areas are now relatively 1 to 2 degrees on average per year cooler than the overall United States. And on hot days, the difference is even 5 degrees. So also these forests are cooling locally and regionally. And in the end, with all these processes also globally. So I want to give a particular attention to the Amazon rainforest. Just showed you the map of the tipping points. This is the only tipping point that humanity can actually directly intervene with by protecting and regenerating the forest, get the finance done to get people on the ground, all of them in the forest, get them paid to regenerate the forest. And it's not something that has something to do with South America. It is for global health. It is also the collapse of the Amazon rainforest, which can go very fast, would actually destroy a global food production, not just in South America, one of the great food baskets of the world, but also in the Midwest United States, because it's dependent on moisture also coming from the Amazon during the growing season, and all the way to southern Africa, which, by the way, is now in the largest drought on record, caused in part by the record droughts in the Amazon rainforest of 2023 and 2024. So this is a picture which shows that it blows a little slowly, but just to give you an idea, most moisture or water vapor circulates for obvious reasons in the tropics. And but you see also that here, especially between Africa and then the Amazon rainforest, a lot of that forest comes over the Atlantic and then starts circulating over the Amazon rainforest. And some goes all the way to southern Africa, and some during the growing season goes all the way up to the United States. So this is a global cooling and rehydration center. And without that, basically, the world will become much drier, much hotter, and unlivable. Another way to express this is that this is a picture of where most photosynthesis takes place and most biomass production. You see, of course, on the north side, during the northern hemisphere summer, suddenly it comes up because then here all our plants start to photosynthesize. But the large rainforests, the Congo, etc., but also the Indonesian ones and the Amazon are the largest biomass producers on land, and therefore extremely important for carbon and for hydrology. So again, here, this picture of the rainforests, and they are all connected. And so you could say in general that if one goes, it will push the others ones, like a game of falling dominoes into a system. So these systems could change suddenly, and I'm not talking overnight. We're still talking years and decades, but they could then accelerate the other ones and basically leave us with a planet that's uninhabitable, at least for 8 billion people or so. Back to the Amazon rainforest. Why is it the 800-pound gorilla? First of all, it's the largest river system in the world, with roughly a quarter of all water discharge in rivers takes place in the Amazon and its tributaries. And we include, by the way, the Orinoco, which is basically part of that system, but that is not part of the watershed. And the water vapor that comes from these forests from evapotranspiration is quite often much more than what is in the rivers. So the atmospheric rivers that are created by the forest hold a hell of a lot more water than the river itself. And that is the moisture that you have just seen going all the way to South Africa and the Midwest. Right now, it has become a net emitter of carbon due to the dieback of forest and the destruction of the forest. The red area that you see on the east and on the south side is where this forest, which is the size of Europe or the contiguous United States, has already been largely destroyed, and this also has diminished that biotic pump mechanism that I showed before, and it's already weakening. So and that makes for more droughts and more heat, especially in South America, but even around the world. Here's again a picture. People sometimes don't realize how big it is. I put it over the United States, over Australia, and over Europe. It's really big. It's in that sense, it's called quite often the lungs of the planet, and it does produce probably something like 8% of global oxygen, which is important enough. But the most important thing, it's a heart function. It pumps this moisture through the planet. So once we're in the tipping point, then the tropical rainforest goes into switches to savanna. Those are species that evapotranspire much less, and so don't make less clouds, make less rain. So it's a self-reinforcing feedback loop. And the modeling that we have done, especially Anastasia Makarieva, shows that the east of the Amazon, the west of the Amazon, near the Andes, which now has about 3,000 millimeters of rain, could actually become a real desert. So we have to do something about it. You see already that the dry season is increasing by more than a month in that red area where we just saw, and this will accelerate. And the total heat that would be added if we take away the whole forest in one time, the next year, the global temperatures would start rising up to a maximum of 2.5 degrees centigrade on top of what is already happening right now. Basically, it's game over for food production. Our societies would collapse. So it's not something that's out there. It's really part of our living planet that we have to preserve. No time to lose. I'm not going to change. I think that I've already made this quite clear. We have to do something about it. The world has to come together. We have a plan, actually, how to save it. And with that, I'll open the floor to people to talk about how we can actually cool the climate naturally by reviving the biosphere, with everyone everywhere. But we have to start with the Amazon because that is one of the critical points. And if we let that go, then we've lost the game. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you, Rob. That is an amazing story, and one I think that we aren't altogether aware of all the time, and it's something that I think has risen up my agenda quite a long way today. Thank you for that. Yes, questions, please. If you could raise your hand, the hand signal is the best one. That would be great, and I'll kick off with Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great, Rob. Really enjoyed that. I guess I've got a couple of sort of question areas. One is in the atmospheric and climatic modeling. So my first question is, did you say that this level of effects due to evapotranspiration from various forests is not very well embodied in the climate model? And my second point, which I'd like to come on to as well, is I wonder how the kind of systems thinking community can present in a kind of socioeconomic as well as climatic setting the causalities such that they can become then the framework against which the policymakers haven't got a leg to stand on when it comes to, well, this is what you need to do because here's the causality, and by the way, here are the quantities, and hence the timescales that flow from that. So, two questions. And by the way, I have friends who are kind of aerosol physicist types. So
Great.
clouds are of interest to me, and I guess actually tucked in amongst there is also the issue of how one might possibly harness the sort of ocean plankton as part of the atmospheric cooling process, which might be done in short order, but the geoengineering aspects of it, I think, might scare people. So, sorry, there's a whole bunch of stuff there, but be interested to hear your thoughts along those points.
Yes. So basically, I see three questions, and they're all great questions. So, what is the deficiency of the climate models? Of course, there's not one. I think there's about 30 or so that are regularly updated. then about so how do we tell this story in such a way that there is no way about it, that we have to do something about it to make sure our societies continue. And then the last one was about ocean biology and how oceans actually can help cool the climate. Let me first say one very simple thing. One of the things that is happening is diminished cloud cover of the planet, which is directly related to diminished biology of the planet. And 1% less low clouds actually is equivalent to roughly half a degree centigrade of warming. So just at the cloud levels alone, and there's more ways how the atmospheric water cycle cools, that's enormous. And there is some cloud modeling, of course. There's also some modeling about the amount of energy that escapes out into space when you have recondensation at cloud level. But the percentages are absolutely paltry compared to what we thought. I will send later on, if I have time, Peter Banyard and I, we and a couple of others, we calculated the cooling capacity, and the cooling capacity of the Amazon rainforest is roughly 100. And if it functions well, by the way, it has to, not in a drought. It's roughly 190 watts per square meter, which if you tally that over the amount of surface that it has of the planet, it's about 5%, is roughly equal to the Earth energy imbalance right now on the other side of the balance. So if you have a balance sheet, you have the cooling part, you have the heating up part. The heating up part that is basically caused by CO2 and land use change is already counteracted by a similar amount just by the Amazon rainforest alone, as long as it keeps doing its job right. So no, that's not done well in the models, partly because water is extremely difficult to model because it's ship shapes all the time. It goes from ice to water to gas and back. It shifts. It's all the time. It's moving. It's a very restless substance, and so CO2 is easy to do. If you go to how we can how can we tell this story in a way of complex systems? The Gaia theory basically opens this possibility by looking at the planet as a living system that creates and maintains its own homeostasis through all kinds of metabolisms. And with the current increasing technology and computing power and satellite observations, we can also micro observe and understand those processes better. So until recently, it is difficult to understand all what's going on. Actually, medical science still is, of course, largely a black box with a lot of trial and error in it. So I'll quickly go to the phytoplankton remark. In general, you should say that all ecosystems around the world, when they're healthy, they cool and they create their own the conditions for life to thrive. If you look at the ocean, it looks for us like a flat piece of water, but basically it's a landscape as diverse as what is happening on land. So reviving the biology of the oceans would require different methods in different places. So you have ocean deserts where phytoplankton restoration would have enormous and very fast effect. And guesstimates actually are that we could actually we could sequester half the current human emissions within not too long a time if we would do that. But other parts are damaged in a different way. Eutrophication, especially with runoff from sewage and industrial agriculture, do the opposite. So there we actually have to clean up so that biology gets a breather. It's anoxic in those areas, and it needs to go up. It also cools in different ways. Maybe you all are aware that big phytoplankton blooms actually create clouds and rain. And at the same time, it also improves, it also gives birth of zooplankton, krill, that basically daily or nightly makes a circulation down into the ocean, the vertical, and breaks part of the vertical stagnation of the ocean column if there's no much life. So it actually cools the surface water, and at the same time sequesters carbon in their big fat bellies that sort of sinks off into the depth where it stays for thousands of years. I could go on this subject alone for about an hour, but let me not do that.
Thank you there, Rob. Just before Adriana, we had one question in the chat from Stuart. Stuart's asking you, Rob, do you have any dialogue with the Drawdown project? Is the project paying attention to your thesis? Paul Hawkins' Drawdown project. Any thoughts on that?
Not really. I actually I have some small discussion with Amanda Joy Ravenhill. She was a co-founder of Drawdown. And I'm pretty sure that in her circles, this is understood more and more. But I had hoped that the latest book that came out of the Drawdown series would actually pay a hell of a lot more attention to water. But still, it's quite carbon focused.
Right. Thank you. Adriana. You're on mute, Adriana.
Sorry. Well, thank you for the lecture. First of all, I'm from Brazil. I work with climate communication. I've joined the Schumacher Institute, I think, beginning of this year. And I also gave a talk here in which one of the things that I spoke was about the flying rivers. And I've been researching as a communicator, as an artist for many years, but through the perspective of Antonio Nobri, but also studying from Makarieva as well. And I actually finished this month the translation for this to start to be used here in the UK. There is some schools in Birmingham that will be having that. So at another opportunity, I would love to show and share with you.
Lovely. Please do.
Yeah, I'm doing part of it as part of research at Unicamp. I'm under a bursary from FAPESP. And I have a few questions for you that with your organization and what you're doing there, are you working alongside Brazilians, some Brazilians organizations? And because I mean, on the way you put it, it's I think it's important for people to know that there are loads and loads of Brazilians fighting hard for this. You
Absolutely.
know, this is a major thing in Brazil and in South America. And, you know, I think as a question for you, but also a response from what you asked at the end of how we could do this. I would say that it's just a suggestion from a Brazilian that is massively involved in this. It's about organizations to join forces. And you know, the biggest thing would be like, here you can reduce carbon and there we can help increase the forest. I mean, under my studies, the recovery in a massive area goes along 25 years. So, you know, there is like lots of organizations trying to bring up a collaboration effort. It sort of works as a bigger effort. And I don't know if that is something you are connected with or and you are, I don't know, how would if there are organizations that would you like to join forces and things. But also there is one question that it might, it comes from a communicator. I'm not a researcher, but I'm not a scientist. But there is one thing that sometimes I feel curious, and I just wonder if it makes any sense. But with global warming and being able to do more photosynthesis on hotter climate, couldn't part of these efforts on planting, considering the whole African, sorry about this, the whole European flying rivers that goes to Russia and China, couldn't that be improved as well, alongside, of course, the Amazon, that I absolutely agree and know that it's a key factor. But because I would love one day to chat with you more, because I do a whole thing on rewilding, and it's about everyone joining from all parts of the world. And there is Russia is planting soya in Siberia, so it's a whole new world that it's a bit sort of fiberglassing, bursting. So I don't know, just wanted to put a comment on these things.
Muito obrigado, Emma. So yes, you asked several questions. Let me start with the last one. If you would look at the charts of Europe, you see actually that Europe is drying out in large parts, which actually also goes for the south of England. And so yes, in order to restore the hydrology of Europe, and with that, by the way, you could also, that includes, for instance, growing the glaciers on the Alps. You would need to have strategic, large-scale reforestation in Europe. There's a funny thing, I forgot from which book it is, but there's a book from the Roman times where it says that a squirrel could go from the Pyrenees all the way to Gibraltar without touching the ground, because it could stay in the canopies. Well, we have all been in Spain, and we know that is definitely not the case anymore. So we know that from France. So actually, it's largely in medieval, from Roman to medieval times, that a lot of the deforestation has already happened. And strategic reforestation in Europe, while not having contiguous canopies, you don't need that actually. But as you have studied Makreyeva, then you know you can also do that strategically with bands of forest and stuff. That would actually rehydrate Europe. It would protect food production. It would protect the rivers, so there's a lot to go for that. But in the Amazon, it goes faster, simply because there's more heat, and those trees are better at it. So the how-to actually. So in 2019, I called Carlos Nobre just before the great fires in that year, and the idea was actually very simple, and in a sense was already proposed once by Marina Silva, and then under Dilma it has been implemented, but very weakly. And that is, pay everybody in the forest to protect and reforest the forest. And actually, it's not even if you have a minimum salary, would pay a minimum salary. It's roughly 1.5 million families that really live in the forest, not in Manaus or big towns, but in the forest itself. If you would pay them a minimum salary, all of them, say, okay, please do that, but you need to do this and that, and we can actually monitor it. That's a little technical, but anyway, then as long as it's going well in your area, you keep on doing that. That will probably help, and the cost is not that high. With some other measures, I have a plan of 150 pages on how to do it. Then the cost is around $2 billion per month for a couple of years, and then actually carbon credits that would be created from it could actually easily pay off this thing. So pay everybody in the forest to and one of the parts I just mentioned, forest protection and reforestation, but also the transition from open fields to agroforestry. And there's other things. You have to take the cows out. You buy all the cows that are there one time, and then don't let them in anymore, etc. So I mean, there's a whole list. Am I working a lot with Brazilian organizations? No. What I do is I talk a lot with them, but and it's not criticism, but Brazilians are very allergic to foreigners meddling in their affairs. It's much easier to work with the Colombians, for instance. So
I agree.
So I don't want to go too much into it, but it's basically it's very difficult to get accepted within those and at the same time there's thousands and thousands of organizations that are doing marvelous work, but there is no platform there have been attempts that to integrate those efforts. It's still not very well. What I was very happy for, yeah, I'll give you a time, but what I was I was in a meeting with Tulio Andrade the other week, and he's the chief strategist for COP30. And he started the idea of a global mutirão. Global mutirão, for those who speak less Portuguese than Adriana and myself, basically it's a community effort to get things done together fast. In the United States, there's one form of it called barn raising, which actually you also have in rural Brazil. If you make sure that you have a big pot of feijoada, of bean stew, and unlimited beer, everybody will come one night and they will cast your concrete roof all together. No money asked, as long as there's beer and enough food. So, and the idea of having a global mutirão, to have a movement of movements everywhere, that communities stop talking because we talk too much. We're making each other crazy with left, right, etc. But if we do something together, our differences of opinion and political stuff and what is true and what is not true disappears, because you want to get things done. So I am completely in favor, and I will love to support Tulio Andrade's movement of a global mutirão. So please go ahead.
I'll just do a counterback, but this fact that Brazilians are resistant to foreigners should be seen very serious, because for one thing, there is a point about that. And for another thing, it have to be overcome, because 60% of the Amazon is in Brazil, so it needs to be addressed. And one of the things is, I'm not defending this point, but I can communicate where that comes from a little bit. But it is very skeptical about people going there and saying what we have to do, but not doing here by yourself. So when I raise about, reducing the carbon emission, so by bringing an example of doing your chores, you can sort of combine with efforts there, because we fight a lot of, right and left discussions and everything. We have already and then when it comes what can be seen like a neo-colonialism, people are very, very strongly aware, despite this being right or wrong, the fact that it needs to be acknowledged. And once it's acknowledged, understood the history behind it, it can be sort of overcome. So, each person that have a opportunity to join organizations, but with that in mind, I think we'll have much success on, making connections and working alongside Brazilians. And
absolutely. Absolutely. And I, just a few words, because there's other questions coming along too. But so one of the things that I hope these days, because the mess in the world, I think only in best case scenarios, and the best case scenario is actually that China now has its go at being the world power. I think once the once we get through this bottleneck, actually Brazil, or maybe I should say the Amazon, could be actually the next civilization. Why? Because as you know, Carlos Nobre, which is Amazon 4.0, once we start with AI and technology to sequence the amount of possibilities from the largest biodiversity in the world for applications in medicine and but even solutions to replace metals and batteries based on toxic stuff. I think it's possible actually that Brazil actually will come to the point which the reason why it is allergic to outside because it never lived up to its promise, but maybe it will come.
Thank you very much indeed.
I hope we can have a discussion about this at
Right. Good connection there indeed. David, you put something in the chat already. Would you like to talk to that? That'd be thank you.
Yeah, no, you mentioned the follow-up to the Drawdown book, so that's a regeneration. And I'm working with a group from Global Optimism, Christiana Figueroa's group, setting up a regeneration UK project.
Great.
And I'm talking to Rajiv Joshi is the president of the regeneration project. He's now in the UK at the moment, and we're talking about can we bring together a movement of movements, exactly that, in the UK around regeneration. And I mean, your project, it was great to reconnect with Peter at the Tipping Points conference last week.
Yeah, I remember you. I remember. Yeah.
So sorry I missed the lecture. I was busy, but I read about half of the book, and it's totally a regeneration project. So, very excited about can we connect with that? Can we connect what we're trying to do in the UK with the global mutirão? And can we link to what's happening in the Amazon? And, thank you, Adriana, for, clarifying some things about how we need to work with people in Brazil. Because I think, not that we want to go there and kind of, direct things from the UK, but whether we can make constructive links, collaborative projects, kind of mutual support between the two in any way. I mean, clearly the Amazon is so critical. I think it's probably the most critical of the tipping points right now. And so even though obviously mainly what we're trying to do is to create a regenerative economy in the UK, we should be looking at that and how we can help. What can we do? Is there some collaboration that's useful with UK NGOs and so on? Yeah,
absolutely wonderful. And I think one thing, David, if you guys are going at it, I think the most important thing is I think there's more and more investment money waiting to get in, but let's say I'm not saying that you are all included here, but I would say, but we on the tree hugger side are very bad at modeling business cases that regeneration actually makes business sense. And I would say, there's more and more possibilities to actually make that. So I think it's very important because you need money, and we're completely underfunded in this area. I mean, it has cost me almost everything to do this work and never got a penny for it, which I don't mind. But that's not how we're going to regenerate the planet. We need trillions actually to get ourselves out of the mess here. And so focus also on the business models to actually people investing it and then see output that is calculable, measurable, and positive, obviously.
Great. That sounds brilliant indeed. Thank you. Zach, you have a question there.
Hey Rob, thank you very much for the presentation. That was all really interesting. I just had a question about, you talked a lot about kind of food systems and food supply, and then a little bit later you were talking a bit about agroforestry and things like that. And I was wondering if you could just talk a bit about the evapotranspiration due to agricultural crops and things like that, and sort of what the influence that might have. Because obviously if large bits of land are using for sort of cow grazing compared to agroforestry, that must have very, very significant effects. So,
Yes. So, can you rephrase your question so I know what your question is?
well, how could shifting food systems from meat-oriented consumption to something like agroforestry affect the global evapotranspiration
Oh,
rates?
yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, the meat case, I think, is obvious to everyone. As soon as we uh, as soon as we would diminish our intake of animal protein, particularly of cattle, which has the highest impact, and maybe if we should say we can only eat as much as we locally can produce, that would definitely have an effect because the ridiculous amounts of forest that are being destroyed in the tropics, and not just for cow feed, of course, but also palm oil and stuff, is actually adding to the climate problem. And at the same time, you have to ship it all the way from there to here, and then there's not enough space, and you throw it in a barn, and then it gives problems and sewage problems or what have you. Completely unsustainable. So that's definitely something that we have to work on. With regards to agroforestry or in general, food systems that are not monoculture and basically they're flat surfaces where you throw chemical fertilizer and pesticides on it so that something grows, with which you kill the total biology, the biological abundance of soils. So if you replace that, basically, then your evapotranspiration in those systems gets much higher, and it cools down. Actually, Peter has been busy this summer. Peter Banyard has been busy in his summer in Cornwall, behind his old watermill house, to measure the difference between a square meter of bare ground, for instance, a false turf, and grass, in terms of how much energy those surfaces under the sun add to insensible heat to the atmosphere. And the differences are enormous. And you see that grass, but actually all plants actually regulate their own microclimate. I'm talking really microclimate by regulating their own evapotranspiration. So when it gets cooler, they evapotranspire less because temperature is sort of okay. It's like a thermostat in your room. Obviously, false grass does not do that, but it has the same color. So, but even then, there's a huge difference in the amount of sensible heat that comes off it that heats up the immediate air above it. And with bare ground, same. So this is just we are actually hoping to. You know, we could use some help, but you could actually make an atlas where with real-time data where you could measure or model the amount of heat that particular place adds to the atmosphere or not. We all know that if you paint the garage roof white instead of black, it actually helps cooling the climate. Very locally, it's not that much. But so there's all kinds of factors, but the most important thing are land surfaces and vegetation by far. We can actually bring temperatures down, and most importantly, we can get, if there's vegetation cover, the humidity stays in the ground, so you don't get dried out soils quite often. Basically, there's no temperature possible above 40 degrees centigrade if there's still moisture near to the surface of a soil and in vegetation, because it's simply too much energy to get it all evaporated. So the short answer is yes, we can do it, and we can even calculate how much any square meter of land adds to the cooling or the warming of the planet, and with that we could devise policy measures.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you. Anything more here? Donna mentioned the geopolitical question, and I wonder whether you would say more about that, Donna. I'm concerned about how we make a lot of this come about. Donna, any thoughts there?
Well, I mean, because Rob had been talking about how, the forestry is related, like in the squirrel, the continuous canopy, and it's a geopolitical issue. This is, I don't know how to frame it, that people start realizing that. I just threw it out there. And then the humanist thing, because really, even though we keep on talking about nature and natural processes, there's nothing wrong with them. They're beautiful. We're interrupting them. So it is a humanist issue. Somehow we have to start. I don't know. So those,
Mm.
I just put them out there. I don't profess to know how to frame it, but you know, I'm kind of involved in the bioregional thing. I'm here in the United States. So, but it's, geopolitical too. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I just comment on that for that? So I think we could, apart from, I think we can get political will because that's obviously necessary. And with that, a large scale finance, once we connect global temperatures to the health of ecosystems. Right now, it's all CO2.
Mm.
It's X amount of CO2 or methane, whatever. And so get it out, and you have all these ridiculous multi-billion projects that draw carbon out of the sky, which is complete poppycock and a waste of time and money. So once we can get the connection at the scientific level that global temperatures can be regulated by the planet if the planet is healthy enough and its ecosystems are strong enough, that would be one point. And then technically, because we have such an acceleration in possibilities for computing and monitoring via satellites, and now more with AI going into the whole mix, we are able to micromanage and micro observe what happens everywhere, and remodel with regenerative modeling. We can remodel areas, small and large, to improve the climate resilience there. And I'm talking not just temperatures, I'm also talking the absorption of water so that it doesn't run off, vegetation cover so it protects the soil biology, flowering plants so it protects the insects, which then helps the bird populations, etc. So all these things were together, and we're getting there because of our immense technological advances. And it's possible. Now we have to do it.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt, but don't you think our technical advances are also a problem? Because like this is very simple. Like we don't even understand this simple, like it's an educational problem. I can't tell you how many people I tried to say, this is not climate change. That's a symptom. We're an overshoot.
Oh,
We're
sure.
we're we're using more resources than are being replenished by the natural processes of Earth. And they just look at me like, and they get their EVs and think they've, and I don't want to, most of this is very well intentioned. So I don't know. It's like I feel like geopolitically, maybe in different areas, because in some areas it's very much unrest. But you guys in the UK, obviously, you guys are all here, So to start, and and obviously Schumacher Institute, that's why I'm on your mailing list. I love the institution, and it's been around for a while. How are we going to, besides on the ground regenerate the earth, somehow get out there about the education and the framing of these simple processes, that used to be, we knew those intuitively. I mean, that's what we knew. We didn't know how to, you know, fix a broken leg,
Mm. Yeah.
Sure.
a compound fracture, but we understood, although maybe we didn't. I mean, because agricultural practices has been around for a while, so I don't understand whatever mentality, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, where do we go wrong? Why did man start thinking he knew how to farm and cultivate the earth better than Gaia?
Yeah. Quite agree.
It's I'd like to comment on this one thing, and it's maybe another comment that you like. Yes, of course, there needs to be education, but in a time of war, this is not a priority. We don't have that much time. And yes, the next generations needs to be completely educated in understanding the planet as a living system. But right now we need action to an extreme extent in order to get us out of the mess we're in. And we're talking years and maybe a decade and a half before basically the whole thing goes to smithereens, and we'll get such food shocks. People always ask me, so what will be the moment that people really wake up? I said, will it be like in the Ministry of the Future, 20 million Indians die of a heat wave? I said, no, it's just 20 million. What will happen is that at some point you get multiple food basket failures around the world, and food prices will go up amazingly, creating an enormous inflation and making it impossible for billions of people to put food on the table. Then people start acting out, and then basically governments lose control. So, and we're very close. It could happen this year, it could happen in 5 years. It's not going to happen in 20 years. It's earlier than that. So yes, education, fine. Not the highest priority on my priority list.
That's really, I'm reading Huxley's Ape in Essence of Ape or something. So I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but
no, I'm not.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah, thank you. Julian.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you, Rob. That was a really great overview. Just picking up on the animal husbandry, animal farming aspects. And absolutely. I mean, we should be shutting down virtually all animal husbandry for a whole load of reasons, primarily their well-being. I mean, it's just shocking.
Sure.
There are a few areas though where animal husbandry needs to be considered. We had a project now defunct in Iran, where I got the chance to engage with a remarkable man, the late Dr. Taghi Fawwar of an organization called Senesta. And Senesta basically represent the pastoralist population of Iran. And up until the Iran-Iraq war, which prompted the government to go on a drive to dramatically increase the population, which was successful. But up until that time, the pastoralist population, numbering about 200,000, produced all the meat for Iran. Interestingly, with the exception of what we'd never hear about, being an Islamic country, of the pork production, which was and is still conducted in lowland intensive farms. Now, the key point Taghi made, and I'm going to pass on from Taghi, was that those pastoralists maintained, in your terms, the hydrobiotic pump for Iran. So they were operating in the foothills on around about 18% of the country, and they maintained the snowpack in precisely the way that you've described, still to this day, that provides vastly the biggest portion of Iran's very limited water resources. And I think it's significant on several levels. First of all, they employ a pre-Islamic 5,000-year-old practice. Taghi also pointed out that the entire biodiversity requirements of Iran were fulfilled within this 18% of Iran. And the other point, they're persecuted. They've been persecuted for thousands of years for the simple reason they don't need anything from anyone. They work with the ecosystem in a very benign way. They produce meat. They don't like being taxed. They don't see why the hell they should pay taxes. And they just sell their meat to the city folk. And yeah, every now and then, I gather through history, have invaded Tehran. when the persecution has got too much, but they're very much under the thumb now. And the other point to make, the persecution of pastoralists has gone on throughout Southwest Asia, pretty much since time immemorial. And so the hydrobiotic pumps that these pastoralists maintained, almost certainly with very similar practices that these Iranian pastoralists still maintain to this day, have been decimated throughout
Yeah.
South Asia. And there's a great film by Adam Curtis called Bitter Lake. It's up on the BBC iPlayer, where he explains the story of the dam construction and the relocating of the Pashtun pastoralists in Afghanistan, and I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty certain that would have led to the breakdown of the hydrobiotic pumps in Afghanistan and all the subsequent social destabilization. Anyway, I've said far too much. It seems to me there's huge potential there for animals to play a positive role. It's obviously very light touch animal husbandry. And the one final very quick point, one thing we desperately need to restore soils and to sequestrate carbon is compost. And we are greatly assisted in the production of compost by animal husbandry. I'll shut up there. And that's not to say that veganic farming isn't important as well. Of course it is.
Absolutely. And of course, for the great grasslands, nature did invent large herds of ungulates. So not for nothing. And as you said, that of course it's about getting these herds around, right? It's Alan Savory has talked about it after he killed too many elephants in Zimbabwe, and you see that the hoof marks that actually prevent the runoff of water actually stimulates the deep-rooted grasses and other plants in those areas to maintain moisture and evapotranspiration throughout the dry period. So this is well established, and there's similar patterns everywhere in North America, in the Sahel, and the funny thing is, by the way, you don't have large groups of ungulates in South America. And biologists once explained to me that the work there is being taken over by termites as a niche to do these eco services there. So absolutely, there's a role for that. I'm not specialized in that. But again, you would talk about very extensive husbandry over large areas where these animals would roam without fences and everything, and then it's absolutely possible. I've been a wildlife guide in Eastern Africa, so I've roamed a lot on the Serengeti, which is, of course, is an amazing place to be. And there you see that the herds of wildebeest and zebra do exactly that. They revive the ecosystems and follow the rains, and give the possibility for the growth coming back up very, very fast as soon as they've gone. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Julian, for that. And leads me on to one question that's been in my head a little bit is how difficult is regeneration, in the sense that you're trying to create a very complex ecosystem after it's been to a certain extent destroyed. Is the science around that mature enough to understand how to rebuild those sort of complex systems that will provide the services we want?
I have very good news for you.
Mm-hmm.
Nature has been doing this for the last billion or so years, and if you help it a bit and lay off stupid actions on that land, especially in the tropics, it goes almost overnight. I'll give you an example. When people say, "Okay, so you want to reforest the Amazon?" I said, "No, I'm not going to reforest. It's too much work actually to reforest. You have to get plastic bags to a place, and then you have to put a seed in it, and blah blah blah. And then you wait after 4 months. You have to find a place where it is. I've never seen a tree actually put a seed in a plastic bag. What you see is quite often, for instance, in the tropics, that if the only thing you do is make sure that the water doesn't run off with small dams, then the water percolates in, and that's quite often enough for the seeds that are quite often dormant in there to hatch and revive the forest themselves. What usually humans do, and that's definitely a good idea, is to add very functional trees like fruit trees or whatever, or medicinal trees. But in general, certainly in the tropics, but in general, I would say regeneration is extremely fast. In the ocean, it is even faster. And I don't know if you have seen the work of Just Dig It. It's a Dutch organization that that's regreens parts in dried out East Africa mainly. And so they also worked with these boons, these small things to stop the runoff of after a big rain. And satellite measurements have shown that after 4 months after they put them in and the first rain, the green that comes up after behind those boons actually lowers the temperature locally by 0.5 degree compared to the field where it's not done, and increases humidity. So you have already your kickstarting regeneration. So in general, I would say listen to nature and make it and mimic it, and you will be amazed.
Right. I'm trying to agree with that. I recently saw a small film made about a chap whose life's mission in South Africa is to go in and cut down invasive species that have been planted in an attempt to sort of regenerate an area. And it was disastrous, really. Essentially, it took over. And so there must be some sort of safeguards around the process to make sure that doesn't happen. But
Sure.
thank you. That was a great talk. And if everybody's got any more questions, now's a chance. But otherwise, I'd like to say a very big thank you. Dawn. Dawn's, I think. Yeah, are you there?
So I just saw.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, I can't get my video on, but can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. It's just I'm completely new to Schumacher, and I wish I'd been come here before. And it's a brilliant talk. Thank you. I'm in touch with various organisations in Bristol, and I'm just wondering what can I do, because if how do you get a message across in a positive way, and what's the best I can do
Right.
now, because this is urgent, isn't it?
Thank you, Dawn. Maybe, Adriana, are you going to answer that for us?
Yeah, I would quite like, and I don't want to sort of jump ahead on Rob, but nevertheless, if people here are really interested in joining some organizations in Brazil who are already there, who are already struggling, who already need hands-on, I can send a list that I recommend. You don't need to trust me, but nevertheless, it could be a first start on, getting in touch with people there on the ground who already know a lot about these, and it's just double up everything that Rob have said. But if it's something like, we need action quick. Also, for people who are interested in learning more, there is, I think it was today, The Economist launched an article about Marina Silva, about our Minister of Environment, and that is, something that gives a panorama of what is going on political-wise. And I do recommend you have a look at The Economist this week. And yeah, again, I can send a link of 10 organizations. You don't need to trust me, but nevertheless, they can be. But I trust them, and it's a first step.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you. Yes,
Adriana.
please. Yes, please.
Yeah, Dawn, Adriana's in Bristol as well. So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Adriana, I've put my email address for anybody, but in the chat. So if you want to, if you want, it would be nice to connect after this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much on behalf of everybody here for a delightful talk and a lot to think about indeed, and all good speed to you and your efforts on this, because I think it's as you say, its focus has been so much on carbon within the climate change agenda, and water seems to me, and always has been, to be an essential part of this, if not more important in some ways. So thank you very much indeed, and everybody's going to put a thumbs up. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, thank
Great
you.
stuff.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, David.
Bye-bye.
So I think someone asked for my email. I email it wrongly. I'm gonna put here in the whole chat.
Aha.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
Right, I'm gonna
Thank you very much, Ian. It was
Thank you.
very, very good.
Good to see you, Adriana. Yeah.
Likewise.
Adriana. Oh yeah. I'll do that as well. Hang on.
Dawn, you're very welcome to pop down to see us anytime you like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I'm not a member. It's a friend who's shown me this link today. Yeah, where do I? You're not a member either. No. Where do I go?
Well, obviously our website's got some details about it, but
Yeah.
our little office is in the Create Centre in Bristol.
Oh, I used to work in the Create Centre, right?
Yeah, so we've got a little tiny little corner of that is where we park ourselves. But as you might guess, we're a fellowship organisation. We've spread all over the world now, so we do most things online more than anything else nowadays. But we do occasionally have events at the Create Centre or somewhere else in Bristol. I think over the years we've tried just about every location there is in Bristol at one stage or another. But yeah, we'd be delighted if you want to make contact and get involved. That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Right. Yes. Will do.
Okay. Right.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot then. Bye-bye.
And do I need your email? I mean, where's your email, please? Or who? Oh, yeah, I look at the website.
Yeah, info@schumacherinstitute.org.uk always gets to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.